The space station floated in silence above a red dying star. It was called Elindra Prime, the jewel of the Vereen Empire, shining with tall glass towers and golden domes that reflected the last light of a fading sun. But inside its bright walls, fear moved like smoke. Princess Elira Vereen, heir to the throne, walked quickly through the royal corridor, her silver gown flowing behind her. Her guards followed, their helmets glowing faint blue. She tried to smile, but her heart was heavy. Rumors of a coming coup had spread through the empire. Someone inside the palace wanted her dead. Far below, in the lower levels of the station, a human sat at a small bar made of steel. His name was Captain Ryan Cross. He was tall with sharp gray eyes, a short beard and a scar across his jaw. He had seen too many battles and lost too many friends. Ryan was not famous, not rich, not trusted. He was just a human mercenary trying to survive in a galaxy that did not care about humans anymore. A small alien merchant sat beside him and whispered, "You're the one who takes dangerous jobs, yes?" Ryan nodded slowly. "Depends on the job." The merchant handed him a data chip. "Deliver this package to the royal docks. Quiet work, quick money." Ryan took it, not knowing that this small job would change the fate of the galaxy. At the same time, above him, Princess Elira was meeting with the council. Old alien voices argued across the round chamber. "The humans are a weak race," one elder hissed. "They bring war wherever they go," Elira replied softly. "But they bring courage too." Her father's seat was empty. His illness had taken him to the medical wing. Now Elira faced the council alone, and every eye in the room carried doubt. Later that evening, Ryan walked through the royal docks. He moved like a shadow, hands in his jacket, eyes scanning the shiny halls. The air smelled of metal and ozone. He followed the delivery route. But something felt wrong. The guards were missing. The corridors too quiet. His instincts screamed trap. In the throne chamber above, the doors burst open. Masked soldiers rushed in with energy rifles. Elira's guards shouted in panic as blue plasma burned through the air. The princess froze, watching loyal guards fall one by one. From the shadows, a voice called, "Your rule ends tonight, princess." Ryan heard the explosion echo through the deck above. Without thinking, he ran toward the sound, his boots clanging on metal floors. Smoke filled the hallways, alarms screamed, and fire poured from the walls. He pushed through fallen guards, reached the throne chamber, and saw her. A young alien woman surrounded by flames and soldiers. Terrified but unbroken, one assassin aimed a blaster at her heart. Ryan didn't stop to think. He jumped forward, knocking Elira down. The first blaster shot hit him square in the chest, the impact throwing him across the floor. Pain tore through his body like lightning. He gasped but stayed conscious, raising his pistol and firing back. "Who are you?" Elira cried, helping him to his feet. "Just a delivery man," he said with a weak grin, blood running down his shirt. More attackers poured in, surrounding them. Ryan grabbed a fallen guard's rifle and fired again and again. His human reflexes were faster than theirs, sharper, unpredictable. He was fighting against trained killers, and winning. But the blaster fire was endless. He was hit again on the side. Another burning wound. Still he stood, protecting the princess with his body. Elira's eyes widened. She had never seen such madness. Such courage. No alien would do this for a stranger. No one would take 2 shots and keep fighting. "Run!" Ryan shouted, pulling her toward a side door. They raced through the hallways as explosions tore the floor apart behind them. Smoke filled the air. Alarms howled. Ryan's breath came short. His wounds burning, Elira grabbed his arm, trying to keep him steady. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, her voice breaking. He looked at her and smiled faintly. "Because it's right." They reached the hangar. But enemy ships were already landing. Ryan spotted a small cargo shuttle. "Get in," he said, limping toward it. Blaster bolts rained around them as the shuttle door closed. One final shot came through the smoke. It hit Ryan again near his shoulder, sending him crashing to the floor. Elira screamed his name. He coughed, trying to breathe. 3 shots, 3 wounds, but he was still alive. He forced the engines to start, the ship trembling under his hands outside. The hangar exploded as they launched into the burning sky. As the shuttle escaped into space, Elira looked at him in silence. The human was bleeding, fading, but smiling. "Hold on," she whispered, pressing her glowing hands to his wounds. The stars spread before them, endless and cold. She realized something strange. This stranger had saved her life, and for the first time in her royal existence, she felt small before the courage of a human. Flames painted the sky above Elindra Prime as the shuttle sped away from the burning space station. The stars outside looked cold, distant and silent. Inside the ship, everything shook. Sparks flew from the control panels and warning lights flashed red. Ryan gripped the controls tightly, his breathing heavy and uneven. Blood soaked through his torn shirt, spreading dark stains across the metal seat. Princess Alira sat beside him, trembling. Her silver eyes filled with fear and confusion. "Stay with me," she said softly, placing her glowing hands on his wounds. A faint blue light shimmered from her palms, but it was weak. Her royal energy powers could heal, but not completely. Ryan looked at her with a small smile. "You don't have to do that, Princess." "You saved me," she whispered. "I can't let you die." The shuttle rocked violently as enemy ships appeared behind them. Sleek black fighters with red markings moving like shadows in the dark. They fired plasma bolts that streaked across the void. Ryan pulled the lever, sending the shuttle diving between asteroids. Sparks flew, alarms screamed, but he didn't stop. "Those are Royal Interceptors," Alira said, her voice shaking. "They are from my father's fleet," Ryan coughed. "Then your people are trying to kill you too." The realization struck her like a knife. Someone close to her, maybe even the council, had betrayed her. Her heart pounded as she looked at the human beside her, wounded, dying, yet still fighting for her life. The shuttle twisted through a narrow asteroid field. Rocks spun past like angry ghosts. Crashing and splitting into dust, Ryan's hands moved fast. Guiding the ship through impossible gaps, the engines screamed under pressure. Alira glanced at the radar. The enemy ships were closing in. "They'll destroy us," she said, fear breaking through her calm. Ryan grinned faintly. "Not if I crash first." He pulled the shuttle into a hard turn, the force throwing them against their seats. The nearest asteroid was massive, glowing with cracks of red energy. Ryan aimed straight toward it. Flying dangerously close to its surface, enemy ships followed, but they couldn't match his reckless speed. Two of them slammed into the rock and exploded into blinding fire. Alira gasped, gripping the chair. "You're insane." "Maybe," Ryan replied, "but it's working." The last enemy ship fired again, plasma cutting across their hull. The shuttle shook violently. Panels burst open and smoke filled the cabin. Ryan fought the controls, his arms trembling. Blood dripping onto the floor. The engines flickered and died. "We've lost power," Alira cried. "We're falling." The planet below grew larger, a stormy world covered in green clouds and flashes of lightning. Ryan tried restarting the thrusters, but nothing responded. He looked at her and whispered, "Hold on tight." "Princess," the shuttle entered the planet's atmosphere. Flames licking its sides, the heat grew unbearable. Metal screamed under the strain. Alira held onto Ryan as the ship broke through the clouds. They could see dark jungles below, glowing faintly with alien light. The shuttle hit the ground with a violent crash, sliding through trees and dirt until it finally stopped. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then Ryan groaned, coughing smoke. "Still alive," he muttered. Alira pushed open the damaged hatch, fresh air rushing in. Outside, the jungle glowed softly under twin moons. The air smelled sweet and strange, filled with floating lights that moved like tiny stars. Alira stepped out carefully, her gown torn, her face smudged with soot. Ryan followed, limping, his body aching with pain. "This planet," she said, looking around. "It's not on any chart," Ryan shrugged weakly. "Guess we're off the map." Behind them, the shuttle sparked and burned, their only escape destroyed. He collapsed near a rock, breathing hard. Alira knelt beside him, her hands glowing again, trying to heal him more, but her power was fading fast. "You shouldn't waste your energy," he whispered. "Save it for yourself." "I can't," she said. "You took 3 blaster shots for me." Ryan chuckled softly. "Didn't count." She looked at him with a mix of anger and awe. "You're human," she said. "Why risk everything for someone not even your kind?" He opened his eyes and smiled faintly. "Because it's what humans do." A sound echoed through the jungle. Low, deep, and close, Alira turned quickly, her eyes scanning the glowing trees. From the shadows, tall figures moved, their bodies dark and shimmering. Predators, silent and fast, their eyes burning with yellow light. Ryan reached for his blaster, but his hand shook. "Stay behind me," he said, forcing himself to stand. "You can't fight them." "You're hurt," she cried. "Doesn't matter," he said, his voice steady. "I've faced worse." The creatures hissed and lunged, their claws cutting the air. Ryan fired once, then again. each shot lighting the jungle in bursts of blue. Elira screamed as one of them leapt toward him. He rolled aside, fired again, and the beast fell. Another came from behind. Striking his shoulder, he stumbled but didn't fall. Pain burned through him, yet he kept fighting. When the last creature fled, the jungle grew silent again. Elira ran to him, tears shining in her eyes. "You're going to die if this continues," she said. Ryan smiled faintly. "Then I'll die doing something good." She looked at him, this broken, stubborn, human soldier who refused to give up, and felt something she had never felt before, respect and something deeper. "Hidden and powerful," she whispered softly. "Maybe the prophecy was right." Ryan frowned, confused. "What prophecy?" Elira looked up at the glowing sky, her voice almost trembling. "My mother once said, when the galaxy loses hope, a human will rise to remind us what courage means." Ryan laughed quietly, even as his vision blurred. "Sounds like a terrible job." Elira smiled faintly. "Maybe, but you are already doing it." As lightning flashed above and rain began to fall, the human and the alien princess sat together in the strange glowing jungle. One wounded and weary, the other royal yet lost, and somewhere in the darkness unseen eyes watched them from the trees. A faint red light blinked, a tracking beacon, and a cold voice whispered through the static. They survived. The storm howled across the strange world of Vornis 9. Rain poured from the green clouds, washing the blood and smoke from the wrecked shuttle. Lightning flashed across the dark sky, turning the jungle into a sea of glowing trees and shifting shadows. Ryan sat against a rock, breathing slowly. His chest rising with effort, every wound on his body burned, but his eyes stayed open. He was alive, and that was enough for now. Princess Elira built a small fire using pieces of broken metal and dry alien roots. Her silver eyes glowed softly in the light. She had never seen a human bleed so much and still move. In her empire, soldiers died quickly and quietly. But this human refused to give up, even when death stood at his door. "You should rest," she said gently. Ryan shook his head. "We need to move soon." "Move where?" she asked, looking around at the endless jungle. He smiled faintly. "Anywhere that's not here." Strange sounds echoed from deep within the forest. Low growls, wings flapping, whispers that didn't sound human. Elira shivered, wrapping her arms around herself. Vornis 9 was known among spacers as a dead world. No cities, no colonies, only storms and creatures that should not exist. The crash had left them stranded, but something told her the planet was not empty. Ryan checked the blaster, its energy nearly drained. His eyes scanned the jungle, every sense on alert. He had been on dozens of hostile planets before, but none felt like this. It was as if the air itself was alive. Watching, waiting. He looked at Elira, her silver hair damp from the rain, her elegant face marked by soot and exhaustion. Despite her royal blood, she looked fragile now. "Almost human, Princess," he said. "If those ships tracked us here, they'll send scouts soon." Elira nodded. "Then we must find cover." She helped him stand, his arm over her shoulder. Together they moved through the glowing forest, the plants shifting color as they passed. Some leaves pulsed with faint blue light. Others whispered softly as if breathing. The air was thick and warm, full of strange scents that made the mind dizzy. After walking for what felt like hours, they reached a cliff overlooking a valley. In the distance stood the ruins of old stone towers covered in vines. They looked ancient, far older than any known civilization. "Maybe shelter," Ryan muttered. Pointing toward them, Elira frowned. "Those are Vornis temples, built by a race that vanished before our time." He chuckled weakly. "Then maybe their ghosts won't mind sharing." They descended the slope carefully. The ground soft and glowing under their boots at the base of the ruins. A doorway stood half buried in mud. They pushed it open, and the smell of dust and age filled the air. Inside the temple was quiet and vast, with carvings on every wall, symbols of stars, wars, and strange beings that looked both alien and human. Elira traced one of the carvings with her hand. "This is impossible," she whispered. "These carvings show humans fighting beside Vornis warriors." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Humans here? That can't be right." "Maybe long ago," she said softly, "before history forgot." The mystery deepened between them like the dark around their fire. Ryan set up a small camp inside the main hall. He could barely move now, every breath sharp with pain. Elira tore part of her gown to wrap his wounds. Her hands glowed again, sending warmth through his body. For the first time, he felt her power clearly. It wasn't just light. It was life itself. You don't have to, he murmured. I've been worse, she smiled faintly. You keep saying that. Hours passed, and the storm outside faded to gentle rain. Alira sat near the fire, watching him sleep. His face looked calm now, younger. She wondered what kind of world raised humans like him. A people who could endure pain, fight for strangers, and still smile in the face of death. Her empire often spoke of humans as wild and dangerous. But now she saw something different, something rare and powerful. Suddenly a noise broke the silence, footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoed through the temple corridors. Alira froze, her hand reaching for Ryan's blaster. The sound grew closer, and not an animal, but someone walking. Ryan's eyes snapped open instantly, his instincts returning like fire. He signaled her to stay quiet. The footsteps stopped just beyond the doorway. Then a voice spoke, cold, deep, and familiar. Princess Alira, it said, you should not have survived. A figure stepped into the light. Tall and armored in black, it was Commander Drake, once Alira's most loyal guard. Now his eyes burned red behind his visor. Ryan stood slowly, ignoring the pain. Guess you're the welcoming committee, he said. Raising the blaster, Drake laughed. You can't win. Human, you're broken, bleeding, and alone. Ryan grinned. Yeah, but I'm still standing. The two faced each other in silence. Alira looked between them, her heart pounding. This was the man who had sworn to protect her. Now he had become the hand of her enemies. Drake lifted his weapon, the barrel glowing bright red. Ryan pushed Alira aside as the blast fired. The beam tore across his side, knocking him down hard. Smoke filled the hall, and Alira screamed his name. Ryan crawled, his vision darkening, but even on the ground, he raised his blaster and fired back. The shot struck Drake's armor, sending sparks flying. The commander stepped back with a snarl. Still human after all, he hissed. Too stubborn to die, Ryan smiled faintly. That's the idea. As the commander retreated into the shadows, promising to return, Alira rushed to Ryan's side. Tears streaming down her face, he was barely conscious. But his hand found hers. Don't cry. Princess, he whispered weakly. Still alive, still annoying. She held his hand tightly. Her heart aching outside, the storm began again. Lightning flashing through the cracks in the ancient walls. Somewhere in the jungle, alien machines came to life, tracking the human and the princess. The hunt for them had only just begun. Rain fell in heavy sheets across the ruins of the temple. The thunder outside rolled like drums of war, shaking the broken walls inside. The dim fire flickered weakly, casting long shadows over the stone floor. Ryan lay on his back, breathing hard, the fresh burn across his ribs glowing faint red. Alira knelt beside him, her glowing hands trembling as she tried to heal him again. The smell of smoke and blood filled the air. You can't keep doing this, he whispered weakly. You'll burn yourself out. She ignored him, her eyes wet. I won't lose you. Her voice was full of quiet fire. Ryan looked at her and managed a faint grin. You're the princess, remember, you're supposed to give orders, not take them. Alira smiled sadly. Then I command you to stay alive. For a moment there was silence between them. The only sound was the distant rumble of the storm. Then Ryan sat up slowly, groaning, his breath ragged. We can't stay here, he said. He'll be back, and next time, he won't be alone. Alira nodded, looking toward the dark doorway where Commander Drake had vanished. She had once trusted him more than anyone. Now the memory felt like poison. They gathered what little they had. A broken blaster, a half-empty power cell. A torn cloak outside, the jungle hissed and whispered like it was alive. Ryan led the way, limping but determined. Each step made his wounds throb. But he didn't stop. Alira followed close, scanning the shadows for movement. Hours passed before they found a small cave near the edge of a cliff. It overlooked the glowing valley where the temple stood like a silent ghost. They settled there, building another small fire. Alira stared at the flames, her eyes distant. He was my protector, she said softly. Drake saved my life when I was a child. Ryan said nothing, just listened. I thought he was loyal, she continued, her voice breaking. But he betrayed me for power, for the throne. Ryan leaned back, his voice rough. Power does that. It changes people. She looked at him. And you? What changes you, human? He smiled faintly. Pain, outside. The rain slowed to a soft drizzle. Alira sat beside him, closer now. the warmth of the fire reflecting in her silver eyes. "You've been shot 3 times," she said, almost in disbelief. "Why didn't you leave me?" Ryan chuckled weakly. "Because then the story wouldn't be any good." She laughed quietly for the first time since the crash. Her laugh was soft, like music hidden under sadness. Suddenly, the sound of engines roared in the distance. Alira froze. "They found us!" Ryan stood quickly. Pain flashing across his face, he grabbed the blaster. Checked the power. One last shot left. Alira looked toward the valley and saw lights cutting through the mist. Dozens of small ships were landing near the temple. Drake had returned, and this time he brought an army. Ryan turned to her, his expression calm but firm. "You need to run." "No," she said. "I'm not leaving you again." "Listen to me," he said, gripping her shoulder. "If they capture you, it's over. You're the last hope for your people." Tears welled in her eyes. "And what about you?" He smiled faintly. "I'm just a human, remember? We're good at making last stands." Before she could argue, the cave filled with blinding light. Soldiers poured in from the rain, their weapons raised. Ryan pushed Alira behind him and fired the last shot. The blast hit the first soldier square in the chest. Sending him flying, the others opened fire, plasma bolts cutting through the air. Ryan dodged behind a rock, returning fire with a stolen rifle. But there were too many. The air burned with smoke and sound. Alira used her powers, sending waves of energy that knocked soldiers back. Her eyes glowed bright white, her voice echoing through the cave. But for every soldier that fell, 2 more appeared. Ryan was hit again, the blast slamming into his side. He fell to one knee, blood dripping onto the ground. Alira screamed his name, but he forced himself up again. He grabbed a fallen grenade and hurled it toward the cave entrance. The explosion rocked the ground, throwing bodies and dust everywhere. When the smoke cleared, Commander Drake stood at the entrance, untouched. His armor shone under the lightning. "Impressive," he said coldly. 3 blaster wounds, and still you fight. Perhaps humans aren't as weak as I thought." Ryan raised his weapon. "You talk too much," Drake fired first. The beam striking Ryan's chest. The human stumbled, his body jerking, then fell hard to the ground. Alira ran to him, her heart breaking. No, please." Drake lowered his weapon, walking closer. "The galaxy will forget you." "Human," he said, "and she will be nothing." Alira stood, her eyes burning with light. "Never," she whispered. "You will never erase him." Her power exploded in a burst of white energy. Drake was thrown back against the wall. His armor cracking, she knelt beside Ryan, her tears falling on his face. His breathing was weak, but his eyes opened slowly. "You can't cry over me," he whispered. "I'm too stubborn to die yet." She laughed through her tears. "You fool." Drake rose again, his weapon ready. Alira turned, fury in her voice. "You were once my protector. Now you are nothing." Before he could fire, the ground shook violently. Lightning struck the cliff above them, sending rocks crashing down. Drake disappeared into the falling debris. Alira shielded Ryan with her body, the world shaking around them. When the dust settled, the cave was half collapsed. The storm outside had quieted, replaced by the sound of crackling fire. Ryan lay in her arms, barely conscious. She held him tightly, whispering, "You're safe now." "You're safe," he managed a faint smile. "Told you. Too stubborn." Alira looked out at the dark valley below. The battle wasn't over. Drake would return, and the Empire still hunted them. But as long as this human still breathed, hope was not lost. The fire flickered again, casting their shadows on the cave walls, 2 figures against the darkness. Small but unbroken, the storm moved farther away, and for the first time, Princess Alira realized something powerful. The galaxy might have forgotten the strength of humans, but soon they would remember. The night was quiet after the storm. Soft rain fell through cracks in the broken cave roof, dripping gently onto the stone floor. Princess Alira sat beside the fire, her hands glowing faint blue as she worked to heal the human who had risked everything for her. Ryan's body was covered in scars, bruises, and burns, but his chest still rose with slow, stubborn breaths each time he winced in pain. She whispered softly, "Hold on, Ryan, please hold on." He had been unconscious for hours, drifting between life and death. Alira had never felt fear like this before. She was the daughter of a ruler, trained to lead armies and make hard decisions. But none of her lessons prepared her for the pain of seeing someone fight death for her sake. She brushed a strand of silver hair from her face, her glowing eyes filled with tears. Humans were supposed to be reckless, chaotic, and impulsive, but this one had something the galaxy had long forgotten. A heart that refused to surrender. As the fire crackled softly, Ryan stirred. His eyes opened slightly. His voice rough but steady. "Still alive, huh?" Alira let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding, barely. He smiled weakly. "Then we're doing fine." She shook her head, laughing through tears. "You are the most impossible person I've ever met." He smirked faintly. "That's what they used to say back home." She looked at him curiously. "Where is your home?" Ryan stared at the flames for a long moment before speaking. "Earth," he said quietly. "A small blue planet, far away from all this madness." "What was it like?" she asked. He smiled softly, his voice almost nostalgic, loud, messy, full of people who never agreed on anything, but when things got bad, we always stood together. Alira listened carefully, her heart warming at the sound of his voice. It was the first time she had ever heard anyone speak about humanity with pride. Hours passed slowly as Ryan recovered. He managed to sit up by morning, his face pale but determined. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the jungle shimmered with dew and strange light. Alira stepped out of the cave, breathing in the damp air for a moment. She felt peace, a rare and fragile thing. But the peace didn't last in the distance. She could see faint lights moving in the valley below. Enemy scouts searching the ruins. She hurried back inside. "Ryan, we have to move again," he sighed, struggling to stand. "You really don't let a guy rest, do you?" Alira smiled faintly, helping him to his feet. "You can rest when we're safe." They packed what little they had and moved through the forest. The jungle was alive with sound, every leaf glowing softly in shades of green and gold. It felt both beautiful and dangerous. Each step forward brought new tension, but also a strange connection between them. At one point, they stopped near a river of liquid light that flowed quietly through the forest. Ryan stared at it in wonder. "Never seen anything like that." Alira touched the glowing water gently. "It's the essence of Vornis," she said. "A living energy, pure and ancient." He knelt beside her, the reflection of the river dancing in his eyes. "So your people believe this world is alive?" She nodded. "Yes, and it feels you when you walk upon it." He smiled faintly. "Then I hope it likes me." She looked at him seriously. "I think it does." Their journey led them to a tall ridge overlooking the forest. From there, they could see the wreckage of the royal fleet scattered across the horizon. Black smoke rose into the air, and the sky shimmered with faint energy fields. Ryan clenched his fists. "They're burning everything." Alira's voice was low but full of anger. "They want me dead, and they'll destroy worlds to make it happen." He turned to her. "Then we make them pay, but first we survive." They built another camp near the ridge. Ryan began repairing a communication beacon from scraps of tech he scavenged. Alira watched him work, impressed by his focus. "You know, for a mercenary, you're quite good at building things," she said. He grinned. "Humans are good at fixing stuff we didn't break," she smiled. "And breaking things that weren't meant to be fixed." "Exactly," he said. Laughing softly as the sun set, they sat by the fire again. Alira stared into the flames, her expression thoughtful. "Ryan," she said quietly, "do you think humans and my kind could ever live in peace?" He looked at her, his face serious. "If people stop seeing each other as monsters, maybe, but peace isn't given, it's made." She nodded slowly. "Then maybe we can start with us," he smiled. "Maybe we already have." Suddenly, the beacon beeped, faint but clear. Ryan's eyes widened. "Signal found." Alira leaned closer. "Who is it?" Static filled the air, followed by a distorted voice. "This is Commander Drake. I know you're listening." "Princess," her heart froze. Ryan clenched his jaw. "He's tracking us." Drake's voice echoed coldly through the device. "You think you can hide behind that human, but I will find you both, and when I do, your courage will mean nothing." Ryan smashed the beacon against a rock, sparks flying. Alira looked at him, fear and anger burning in her eyes. "He's coming." Ryan nodded. "Then let him come." That night, as the stars glowed above the alien jungle, Ryan sat awake, his blaster in hand. Watching over the sleeping princess, he thought of Earth, of humanity, of every story of sacrifice that had been forgotten, and he knew deep inside that this fight was more than survival. It was a reminder that even in the darkest corners of the galaxy, the human spirit could still shine brighter than any star. The jungle was quiet before dawn. Cold mist covered the glowing leaves. and the twin moons hung low in the green sky. Ryan stood on the cliff edge, staring at the horizon. His bandaged chest rose and fell with each careful breath. Every part of his body hurt, but his eyes burned with purpose below. The valley shimmered with faint lights, moving like a swarm of fireflies, enemy ships coming for them. Princess Elira stepped beside him, her silver gown torn and darkened by travel. Her face looked calm, but her eyes were full of fear. "They found us," she whispered. Ryan nodded slowly. "Yeah, looks like they brought friends down below." Dozens of royal warships hovered over the jungle, their engines rumbling like thunder. Elira's heart tightened. "They won't stop until we're both dead." Ryan smiled faintly. "Then we won't make it easy for them." He turned and began checking the stolen weapons. Old rifles, energy grenades, a half-functional pulse cannon, all scavenged from wrecks and fallen soldiers. Elira watched him quietly, her thoughts heavy. "You can't fight them all, Ryan," she said softly. "It's suicide." He shrugged. "Yeah, but it's a good day to go out loud." She reached out, touching his arm. "You don't have to do this alone." He looked at her, and for a moment his voice softened. "You've already done enough, Princess. If I fall, you run. You survive." Her eyes filled with emotion. "And leave you to die? Never." The sky above flashed red as the first dropships descended. The sound of engines shook the ground. Ryan raised his blaster and took a deep breath. "Then we make our stand here," he said, his tone calm and steady. Elira nodded, her hands beginning to glow, the ancient energy of her bloodline awakening again. Moments later, the jungle exploded with fire. Soldiers in black armor poured out of the ships, their boots crushing the glowing grass beneath them. Energy bolts lit the air like falling stars. Ryan fired back, every shot precise and fast. The ground shook as explosions tore through the trees, sending waves of smoke and debris into the air. Elira moved beside him. Her eyes glowing white, she raised her hands, creating a shimmering barrier that blocked incoming fire. Her voice rang through the chaos, strong and clear. "For every world you've destroyed, for every life you've taken, today, we fight back." Ryan laughed breathlessly. "Remind me not to make you angry." Together they fought side by side. A human and an alien princess. Two souls defying an empire, but the enemy numbers were endless. For every soldier they dropped, 3 more arrived. Ryan reloaded, ducked behind a broken wall and shouted, "We need to end this now." Elira turned, her expression fierce. "There's one way." She pointed toward a massive carrier ship hovering above the valley. "That's their command vessel. If we destroy it, they'll fall into chaos." Ryan nodded. "Then that's our target." They ran through the burning jungle, dodging blasts and debris. The air was thick with smoke and ash. Ryan's wounds reopened, but he didn't slow down. Elira used her powers to clear the path, lifting fallen trees and crushing metal with invisible force. When they reached the clearing, a half-destroyed transport ship waited. Ryan grinned. "Guess we found our ride." They climbed aboard, the engines coughing weakly as he tried to start them. The old machine roared to life, rising shakily into the air. Elira sat beside him, gripping the controls. "Can you fly this thing?" Ryan laughed. "I can crash it in style." The transport shot upward, weaving between plasma blasts and enemy fighters. The massive carrier loomed above them, black and silver, its cannons glowing red. "Hold on," Ryan said, diving straight toward it. Elira gasped. "Are you insane?" "Probably," he said, grinning through the pain. "But it'll work." The ship shook as it hit the carrier's hull, scraping metal and sparks flying everywhere. They crashed through a hangar bay, skidding to a stop amid alarms and sirens. Ryan jumped out, blaster in hand, taking down guards before they could react. Elira followed, her powers bursting with light, hurling soldiers aside like dust. Together, they fought through corridors filled with smoke and chaos. The carrier trembled under constant attack. At last they reached the reactor chamber. A pulsing sphere of red energy hummed at the center. Guarded by armed officers, Ryan threw a grenade, the explosion echoing through the metal hall. The guards fell, and the reactor's core flickered dangerously. Elira turned to him, her voice shaking. "If that core explodes, it'll take everything within 10 miles. Ryan smiled weakly. "Then we better leave fast." But as they ran toward the exit, a familiar voice stopped them cold. "Leaving so soon?" Commander Drake stepped from the shadows, his armor scorched but unbroken. Elira's face hardened. "Drake!" Ryan raised his blaster. "Didn't I drop you off a cliff last time?" Drake smirked. "Humans never learn when to die." The two charged at each other. Blaster against sword, sparks flying with each clash. Ryan fought with everything he had, but Drake's strength was monstrous. He was struck again, his body slamming against the wall. Alira screamed his name and unleashed her power. Blinding light flooding the chamber, Drake stumbled, his armor cracking. But still he stood, Ryan barely conscious. Pushed himself up and grabbed a fallen rifle. He fired one last time, the blast piercing the reactor's shield. Energy erupted like a star being born. The walls glowed white. The air trembled with power. Alira ran to him, tears streaming down her face. "We have to go." He shook his head, blood dripping from his lips. "No time. Get to the shuttle." "I won't leave you," she said, her voice breaking. He smiled faintly. "You have to, Princess. Humanity doesn't die today. It lives through you." Before she could argue, the explosion consumed the chamber. Light swallowed everything, bright as the heart of a sun. Outside, the carrier ship burst apart in a wave of fire that lit up the entire sky. The enemy fleet broke formation, panic spreading through their ranks. The legend of one human, the man who took 3 blaster shots and destroyed an empire's fleet, was born that day. Alira's escape pod fell through the clouds, landing safely on the surface below. She crawled out, eyes full of tears, watching the burning sky. She whispered softly, "You did it, Ryan. You saved us all." The jungle wind carried her words away, and somewhere in the heavens among the burning stars, the story of humanity's courage was written forever. The sky over Vornis 9 was no longer green with storms. It burned golden red, painted by the light of 1,000 fires in the heavens. The great carrier ships of the Varine Empire were gone, broken and scattered like ashes among the stars. Only silence remained now, deep and endless on the surface below. The jungles glowed softly, their light returning after the long night of war. Princess Alira stood on the edge of the crater where her escape pod had landed. Her silver gown was torn, her face streaked with tears and dust. Above her, the sky still shimmered faintly with the memory of the explosion that had taken Ryan Cross. The human who had defied an empire, the man who had fought against fate itself. She pressed a trembling hand against her chest, feeling the echo of his last words. "Humanity doesn't die today. It lives through you." For a long time she said nothing. Only the whisper of the wind moved through the trees. The galaxy had lost one man, but it had gained something greater. A story, a spark, a reminder of what courage truly meant. She looked up at the twin moons and whispered, "You saved me, Ryan, and through you I will save them all." Days passed, and the survivors of the rebellion found her. Broken ships fell from the sky, carrying wounded soldiers, engineers, and refugees from across the empire. They gathered around her like lost children finding home. When they asked what had happened, she told them the truth. She spoke of a human warrior who took 3 blaster shots and still stood, who faced an army not for gold, not for glory, but for what was right. Her words spread like fire through every channel, every fleet, every hidden world. Soon the galaxy began to whisper the tale. Some called him the Iron Soul, others called him the Human Star, but to Alira, he was simply Ryan, the man who reminded her what strength truly was. Under her command, the rebellion became something new. It was no longer about vengeance or power. It was about unity, about the spirit that one dying human had shown. She carried his memory like a weapon and a promise. Months passed and the war finally ended. Alira returned to the capital world of Elindra Prime. The once shining towers were dark, the golden domes scarred by fire. The council that had betrayed her was gone, scattered or imprisoned. She walked through the silent halls of the throne room. Every step echoed with memory. She could still see Ryan standing there, blood on his chest, smile on his face, defying death itself. Before the people of the Empire, she stood on the grand balcony. The sky was filled with ships from every world. Humans, aliens, traders, soldiers, all gathered under one banner. She raised her hand, her voice strong and clear. "Once, our empire believed that humans were weak," she said, her tone like thunder. "But I saw the truth. I saw a human who faced death not for himself, but for someone he barely knew. He showed us what courage is, what heart means, and what it truly is to be alive." The crowd below was silent. Listening, feeling every word, Alira continued, her voice trembling with emotion. "Humanity has given us more than we ever gave them, and I will never let this galaxy forget his name. From that day, Statues of Ryan Cross rose across alien worlds in the gardens of Vornis 9. A great monument stood, and a man holding a broken blaster. Looking toward the stars, the inscription read, "He took 3 blaster shots to save the alien princess, and his courage stunned the galaxy." Children grew up hearing his story. Soldiers carried his name into battle as a blessing. Even those who had once hated humans began to honor them, because one of them had done what no emperor ever could, inspire peace. Years passed, and Princess Elira became Queen Elira. Under her rule, the galaxy entered an age of rebuilding and unity. She often stood on her balcony at night. Staring at the stars in the quiet, she would speak softly, as if Ryan were still there beside her. "Do you see it?" she would whisper. "The worlds you saved, the peace you built." Sometimes the wind would rise suddenly, the stars seeming to flicker brighter, and she would smile faintly, believing that somewhere out there, he was listening, but legends never truly end. In the archives of Elindra Prime years later, an explorer found a record, a faint signal buried deep in the wreckage of the carrier ship. A human heartbeat, weak but steady, recorded moments before the explosion. The news spread like wildfire. Some said it was just an echo. Others believed he had survived. Elira never spoke of it publicly, but every night she looked to the stars with hope, because humans had a strange habit. They never stayed dead for long. In time, the story of Ryan Cross became more than history. It became a legend told across light years, a song sung by travelers, a prayer whispered by warriors before battle, and wherever his name was spoken, courage followed. The galaxy would forever remember that one human who stood against the impossible, and proved once and for all that the human spirit could never be conquered. Above the twin moons of Vornis 9, the stars burned brighter than ever. And somewhere in the endless night, a single voice seemed to echo through the void, calm, steady, and full of that same reckless courage. "Still alive, still fighting."